government policy on urban planning and as a widely cited academic. My name is Sean Britton from 2SER 107.3 in Sydney, and each week Ed and I have a chat about what's the latest news out of the United States, talking everything politics, planning and policy, from sea to shining sea. Find us on iTunes, Whooshka, Facebook and Twitter at US of Ed. It's been a crazy week, but let's start with the NRA. News that they spent $30 million on Donald Trump's 2016 campaign and suspicions that could have been Russian money. Not to mention the good old boys, American as apple pie, National Rifle Association was infiltrated by an alleged Russian agent. What's going on?
Well, I think we've talked about this already, actually, of the NRA actually siphoning money illegally into the campaign. The source of that money has always been an issue regarding exactly how it got there, because, you know, you can bait and switch. In a sense, the Russians give them money for X and then it frees up money for Y. And some of that was actually going on, to the best we know. And it just gets murkier and uglier. There's no doubt the NRA was on his side, which is perfectly legal. But to spend money on him, a nonprofit organization, that against the law for them to take a political position of any kind. So the NRA, they're up to their necks now. Who's next?
Donald Trump tweeting this week following Iranian threats that further threats would mean consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. In all caps, no less. So you know he means business. First thoughts, Ed?
Is this North Korea? I mean, this is a repeat. And why Iran? He doesn't know where it is on a map. He doesn't ever say why he's upset about Iran. The Iranians don't, to the best of anybody's knowledge, have an atomic weapon. They do have a minor threat. That is, they're supporting some groups that we oppose. That could be negotiated if one tried hard. The Iranians have a lot to lose, particularly in the north, with all these people coming in who are claiming that to be their territory. So we got to be supporting the Iranians rather than saying we're going to throw bombs at them. And maybe that would bring some stability to Iran and Iraq and the rest of the Middle East.
It does sound a bit unhinged, but furthermore doesn't really seem to have the impact of Trump's earlier wild declarations on Twitter. I mean, Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said in reply, "Colorless, unimpressed." And I think this time most of the US and world media have remained unimpressed as well. Is Trump losing his ability, try as he might, to distract from scandals like Russia and the Cohen tape?
Well, he is, but he's doing something else. He's actually trying to look like he's presidential. And he tries these tacks not like a real president would, with a long-term strategy, but what flypaper will stick to the wall. So he's throwing up one thing after another. The Mueller investigation isn't in his sights right now. Maybe he's letting other people do that dirty work. But what he's trying to do, and it starts with that Putin visit, look presidential. But he didn't look presidential because he blew it. He's trying to make these trade deals look presidential. These trade deals are backfiring. So that's not making it. Now it's Iran. Before it was North Korea. These are all a person who has a very short attention span and has a great short need for enthusiastic applause behind him, no matter what the cause.
Speaking of the Cohen tape, former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen has released a tape this week of Donald Trump discussing hush money payments to a former Playboy model who claims she had an affair with Trump. Feels pretty unlikely to damage Trump at this late stage, but it does put a pin in Trump hopes that Michael Cohen would never flip on him.
Well, it doesn't matter, does it? Cohen's out for himself, and the president knows that anything that Cohen says doesn't count for much. Everyone knows these scandals are what they are. He has lied about it, but the lies were so thin people could see through them. So this isn't getting him into trouble. It'd get anybody normal into trouble, but not him.
Interesting one today. A group of 11 House Conservatives have introduced articles of impeachment against Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Now, Rosenstein, a frequent target of Trump's, seemingly for doing nothing to impede the Russia investigation. Impeachment is unlikely, but what's going on?
Well, what's going on is more intimidation. This is an attempt to reach Mueller. If you can't reach him directly, you reach him indirectly. They're trying to get this investigation slowed down, stopped, halted, or run out of town. The counter to this, though, is if the Democrats started impeachment movements on people in the administration, including the president, we would have a real big brouhaha. Furthermore, for the Republicans, this is not a good time to do this. It gives more credibility to the investigation. It doesn't detract from it. I suspect they're doing this for their own seats in their own districts, if we actually dissected who they are, and they had to do something to show how loyal they are to Trump, and this is a way to do it. But it doesn't have much chance.
And speaking of, maybe uncooperative officials, this week the idea has been floated of the administration taking security clearance away from officials that have been critical of Trump, such as former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey. Just how unusual of a move would this be?
It wouldn't be that unusual in the sense that usually when a person like Comey leaves, the security clearance leaves with him. He's making a big deal of this, but again, this could come back to bite him. Persecuting your enemies. This sounds like some tin-pot dictator. And these are people who are not small potatoes. They're big names, important names. If they get their security clearance taken away, most of the White House staff have to have theirs taken away because they're the ones leaking on Trump. And they're the ones who are incompetent. And what about his own son-in-law? I can't imagine him being as worthy of a security clearance as the people you've named.
Trump tariffs. We know it's been hurting a lot of American farmers and other workers, such as those in the steel industry. There's a proposed $12 billion in aid plan for farmers hurt by Chinese reactions to the tariffs. $12 billion, Ed. How does this stack up with Republican fiscal management?
It doesn't. It stacks up with the votes. And I think it's a little bit too little too late. You can't get that harvest back. Those customers are not there. So if you give the farmers more money, you're giving them money to do what? The farmers don't want to go on welfare. They want customers. So next year you're going to give them $12 billion? It would be easier if they just sold their grain to a customer out there and we push the customer to open up for the sale of other things. But this one, I think, again, here's a president saying, my ideas work, but when they don't work, he wiggles a way out of it, makes some contradictory statements about that, and pushes on. Again, if it were anyone else in the world, they'd be gone.
And just on the too little too late aspect of it, some have said Trump is playing favourites. I mean, $12 billion for aid for farmers, but those steel workers we mentioned there, they're not getting anything after these tariffs have destroyed a lot of their livelihood. So what would be the advantage here?
None that I can think of. And the auto workers and the workers in other fields, this has affected fishermen. It's affected high-tech workers. It's affected a lot of people. So his attempt here is to hit the biggest target. The farmers are a very big target. They have very, very deep roots in the Republican Party and a very strong constituency. So he's paying them off. Didn't he pay off some women who had similar qualifications?
I am getting to see a little bit of a pattern here.
Mm.
Just speaking of American steel, once upon a time there was a lot of that going into American cars. The Trump administration making a curious decision this week to freeze fuel efficiency standards for cars and trucks for 6 years across the United States. This rolls back regulations. Furthermore, they've challenged the right of California and other states to set their own tailpipe standards. It's a blow for the environment, but it's also a weird challenge to state rights from the federal government. What's going on?
Well, this is pretty settled law that the states do have the right, and particularly California, which has made it part of their constitution, to protect their environment. It's a constitutional privilege. I don't know if you know this. When you go into California by car, they inspect your car to see that there are no animals in it or on it, no fruit that you brought from another state, etc. So California has wide scope in this, and it's already been tested in the courts. And as long as you are not doing this for some nefarious purpose, you can continue to do it. If the courts upheld this means most of environmental protection in the states would be gone, because every state, because it has different climate conditions, has a different control mechanism. I think this is, again, blowing smoke. The auto manufacturers have a real problem, because the United States may be doing this, but they sell a lot of their cars overseas that have even stiffer qualifications. So it doesn't make much sense if you're going to have to meet California qualifications and European qualifications to change the way you make your cars. Blowing smoke again.
And just a couple more things from Trump. Trump now afraid Russia will interfere with American elections on behalf of Democrats. He said this week, "I'm very concerned that Russia will be fighting very hard to have an impact on the upcoming election based on the fact that no president has been tougher on Russia than me. They will be pushing very hard for Democrats."
Do you want me to laugh or vomit? This is so preposterous, so impossible, that even people who support Trump must be thinking, why do this? It's obvious that Hillary Clinton was their target. It's obvious that many of the big people in the Democratic Party are hostile to the Russians' takeovers around the world. So why would the Russians want to get Democrats in power? Mr. Trump, please tell me.
And finally, Trump at a rally in Kansas City a couple of days ago had to say, "Just remember what you are seeing and what you are reading is not what's happening." Now, a few people have compared this to a line of George Orwell's classic totalitarian novel 1984. "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." Ed, I was watching a program with former cult members last night, and I've got to say, not for the first time, seeing some eerie parallels.
Absolutely. It may not be purposeful, but it's certainly there. You've got to create your own narrative, create your own world, get people to believe that's the real world, and move them into them. It's the kind of thing that the Moonies have done, many other cults have done, and now we have the Trump cult.
US Event is produced in the studios of 2SER 107.3. To help support the work we do, go to 2ser.com/donate. Ed and I'll be back next week to talk the latest in American news and politics. Subscribe on iTunes and Whooshka to stay up to date, and show us some love on Facebook and Twitter.